Okay, nice. All right, so thank you everyone for joining me today. As I said, we're going to talk about how we evaluate AI opportunities. So how do we decide what is genuinely worth investing in, what is probably hype, and then what might be a good idea but isn't practical yet. So you'll see on the screen, I'm Flo, I'm a product manager, and I work at Impulse, which is an employee engagement platform. But this is not really a presentation about Impulse or just about employee engagement, because I want the framework that I share with you guys to be useful regardless of your industry or company or the products or services that you guys provide. So I will use examples from employee engagement because that's where I can speak most honestly, but the underlying questions are universal. So the questions are, where can AI create meaningful value? What does it really cost to deliver? What risks are we taking on? And how do we avoid investing in something that looks impressive in theory, but it fails to solve any real problem that anyone's facing? So one of the biggest challenges within AI at the moment is that almost every idea sounds really exciting and it sounds really innovative. And it's easy to produce like a demo or a mock-up that looks really slick and impressive, but it's much harder to turn that prototype into something that's actually useful, scalable, sustainable. So today is really about improving the quality of those investment decisions. So we're going to cover 4 broad areas. Firstly, we'll look at the pressure that organisations face to just add AI and why that can lead to weak decisions. And then we will look at a simple kind of evaluation matrix, which is going to be based on 2 things. First thing being potential impact, and the other thing being real world practical feasibility. So I'll show you what we use at Impulse there. And then after that, we'll look at the cost of implementing AI. So not just like, here's what we're going to invest up front, but actually scaling that out, making it a long-standing product that people use every day. There's so much invisible cost that sits underneath that people don't really realise, and we've faced that as we've rolled out our tools as well. And then we'll look at why internal AI tools should be judged differently based on whether they're customer-facing or whether they're internal. Because obviously they serve different purposes, but generally the principles should be the same. So how can we look at them in different realms? As I said, I will use examples, but if you guys have anything you want to jump in with, if you have any learnings to share, any questions, challenges, then just let me know. So the goal is that you guys will leave here with a number of practical questions that you can apply to your own lives, organizations, teams. But we will start by looking at this universal challenge. So the starting point, as I said, is the pressure just to do something with AI. So whether you are facing leadership, asking what the strategy is, whether you're looking at competitors launching their features, whether you've got customers asking whether AI is included, then you will know that the pressure is on. And people often see things exist in other spaces and they think they can replicate it with no fuss, no cost, no stress, which is not necessarily unreasonable, but we know that danger comes when you are simply told add more AI. So it is creating genuine opportunities. Ignoring it would be a mistake. But what we do at Impulse is we start with the problem that we're trying to solve, not the technology. So once a business has decided that it needs an AI feature, you kind of start with the feature and you look at where can I put it in. So it becomes, what can we make AI do, rather than what problem are we trying to solve. So that's how organizations end up with these features that they attract attention and they're great in theory, but they receive really low usage. And if you've ever rolled out or started using an AI tool that's failed, you'll know what an expensive mistake that is. because it's a huge investment. So for us, the universal rule is don't start with the technology, start with the problem or the business value. So you need to ask the questions, what friction are we removing? What sort of manual processes are there that people are doing all the time that just they're banging their head against the wall, and we want to change that behavior? What kind of decisions can be made faster? And then what is the measurable improvement that we want to drive? So that's the first side. The second side is what we call the strategy gap. So we know that AI can be technically capable of doing something without being good investment. So a prototype might prove that a model can complete a task. Like I think it was, I've lost your names on my screen, but someone at the beginning was saying that they're looking at agentic AI. So you can see that a model can complete a task, but that doesn't prove that customers need it or our teams need it, that they trust it. Trust is a big one. And that the economics of it will work at scale. So the feasibility has to sit alongside impact. And when I use the word feasibility, I don't just mean like, can an engineer make this work? I mean, how can you deliver it repeatedly, accurately, securely? How can you maintain it? How can you test it? All of those questions. So a useful AI opportunity needs to clear both of these hurdles. It has to actually matter to people, and it has to be deliverable. So that's just a bit of context. This is the evaluation matrix that we use at Impulse. So this uses kind of examples of HR technologies, but on the one axis going upwards, you have impact, and then on the other one you have complexity. So impact is about the value of the tool or the problem that you're solving. So for an internal tool, that might mean like, how many hours have you saved? How much operating cost have you removed? What are you delivering faster, or what kind of manual errors are you reducing? And then maybe for a customer-facing feature, it might be how we're strengthening adoption, how we're strengthening retention, how we're improving our competitive advantage, or I guess getting more money from our customers, basically. So you'll see in each of these quadrants, you have a different sort of theme. So if something on the top left quadrant is high impact but low complexity, then we call that a quick win. So these are things that are really valuable in practice. They don't really take much cost or resource to implement. So things like, if you have what we all use, ChatGPT, Gemini, those are things that we internally pay £20 a month for per user, but it increases their output, it increases their time to insight, it increases the quality of the information that we're getting. So those are things that we call quick wins, and they are worth implementing and worth implementing now. So these are the best places to make the first investment. And the examples we've got here is things like content drafting, so the sort of LLMs, the chat tools that we will use, then data summarization. So obviously I caveat that with, you have to ensure, for us, we use our client data, right? So we have to anonymize it. We have to make sure we're working within the realms of our own data security. But you can give that to an LLM and then it can just churn it out pretty much immediately. So that's the quick wins. Then on the right-hand side in the top, you've got strategic bets. So these are ones that, again, are really high impact, but the complexity for implementing them is also high. So they might be where the organization ultimately wants to go, but they need foundations, they need strong governance, they need good data, they require a bit more of a rollout process and a behavioral change as well. So these are things like workflow automation. So for us at Impulse, we have a customer success team, and they build these insights packs for clients where they take all the data off the system, they do a lot of manual analysis on it, and we actually built a Claude bot to do it for them. So they just pull all the data, they upload it to this Claude bot. The Claude bot knows what process they would normally go through, and it trains itself to do it for them. So they've saved, I think, in the past, there was one report that took one person 5 days to produce, and Claude produced it in 20 minutes. So it's really valuable, but the foundations that we had to lay to get there to make sure that like we weren't leaking customer data, we weren't in breach of our contracts, we weren't in breach of GDPR and all those things. It required a lot of those foundational moves. So these aren't immediate wins. They're things like in the workflows of how we actually work, can we replace those actions that people are doing every day, so that they can then refocus their time on more valuable work, basically. So the top half is all very good. The bottom half is not. So on the bottom left, you've got the utilities. So these are things that are really easy to build. They're not complex, but they also don't really help that much. So they can be quite tempting to invest in because they're really easy. So like you could build it in a few days. It doesn't take much implementation, but the ease of delivery doesn't necessarily make it valuable, because every feature, even though initial investment might not be that high, it does have an ongoing cost. It needs testing, it needs documentation, it needs support. You also need to be on the ball with like the regulation. So I didn't even know this was coming until I set up my Claude bot that gives me news of the industry. They are bringing in an EU AI Act, which basically means that if you have any AI features like us, we have almost a version of ChatGPT on our platform. You have to label everything now at the point that anyone is interacting with any AI feature. So one example is our survey tool. During our survey tool, if you are an employee, you work in First Bus and you're filling out a survey, if your free text answers are then being used to kind of feed our AI tools so that your team lead will be able to see a summary of what your whole team has said, you need to be informed of that at the point that you're inputting the response. When historically you didn't need to, you just sort of, it was good practice to say, oh, just so you know, this is AI, so you should review this. But now it's actually like a regulatory requirement. So yeah, it's not just the initial investment. You have to maintain it, scale it, test it, review it. So yeah, so these are low value, low complexity. And then I won't go too far into the bottom right quadrant because it's low impact, it's low value. These are things that look really shiny as new features, but actually they don't help anyone. No one's going to use it. It's too difficult to implement. And the examples we've got here are things like low frequency automation. So if you roll out a project where you're giving someone's work to a robot and you have to build this robot, it's expensive, and actually it's only being used once a year, that's danger zone. So that's how we do it at Impulse. But for
sorry, Viv, can I ask a quick question on the last slide? Just on the I'm just curious about the AI performance ratings one. So what we've got is with Agentic AI, it's managed by the managed service provider and we're the customer. When you say the performance rating, is that like the thumbs up, thumbs down function that you're referring to, or is that something else?
Yeah, so it's kind of, we've seen in the HR industry, people do they use AI. They'll give like transcripts of one-to-ones and stuff that you might have with your manager. They then give that to AI, and then AI rates their performance.
Oh, okay, sorry. So it's using AI for performance rating, not performance ratings of AI.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry, I'd misunderstood. Perfect.
exactly.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. So this kind of I guess if you research into AI, and obviously we all use it, so we all know the human element is so important.
Yeah,
So you can't use AI to basically replace things that need to be done by a human. It's
Yeah.
more of a collaboration.
perfect. Sorry, I'd misunderstood what that
It's
one
okay.
meant. Thank you.
That's okay. So yeah, so this is kind of summarized in a matrix, as I said, for anyone, regardless of what industry you're in, what team you work in, like what your AI vision is, you can categorize them into those 4 quadrants. On this page, I've summarized it as the quick wins. So these are where you should focus your initial investment because they're easy to roll out. They don't require a lot of technical implementation, but they really have immediate impact. And yeah, I think Copilot and things like that are really commonly rolled out across organizations of all sizes because you don't have to learn it. You're not asking people to visit another third-party tool. It lives within their systems. They don't have to jump around, have training on it. It's just kind of self-explanatory. So that's a quick win. Strategic bets are like the longer term vision things. So they require a lot of groundwork, but actually the commitment is worth it because it would transform the organization. So that's things like automating those workflows. If you've got like people doing a lot of manual stuff, how can you roll out tools that replace those tasks for them? And then just anything below the horizontal line, if they're low impact, whether they're easy to implement or not, they should just be avoided because you might not know initially what the long-term investment is, but it's just not worth it. If you're starting with the problem and the impact to solve that problem is nil, then it's just off the table. So no pressure, but I would love to hear if you guys in your teams or in your daily lives have heard about any cool ideas that you think actually in practice would not land.
I'll go ahead since no one else is raising their hand. I don't know if I'd call it cool, but one example that we have at the moment is the implementation of agentic AI on the phone line. So we've got it through like web channels, web like messaging, but not through the phone line. And that's something that's being kind of proposed and driven, or potentially driven. But actually, I think it could actually cause a lot of frustration. A lot of people are probably going to try and bypass it, and actually the setup of it probably sits in that really high complexity space because of the validation, the identification, and then verification elements associated with it. So that's probably one example that sticks out to me at the moment.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of these kind of agents doing like you're actually interacting with someone who is a robot.
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen many instances where it works really well. I think one example I thought was quite cool is Google were doing like mock interviews.
Oh, cool.
For students and stuff. So where they don't have access to like training or like opportunities, Google is using a robot to train them on interview skills and stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but there was another hand that went up. Did anyone else want to jump in?
Well, I was just going to go add to what she said about the phone lines, because that's the thing that at the moment is something that we're actually struggling with. The thin line between GDPR, how do you do voice recognition via AI, and ensure that the AI knows that the voice belongs to who it says it belongs to without using any other form of identification. So there's also that whole world. If you're using my voice, you're technically then taking information that's not anonymized. So are you GDPR or you're not GDPR? So it's really interesting that everybody, because I was thinking, oh, that is something that we're struggling with as well. Like, how do we do that? So there's the whole element of, okay, you put in a code, fine, but then as part of two-factor authentication, it might say, okay, use your voice or use this, and you're like, not really sure how that's going to pan out by using AI, or what AI to actually use, not just even, just using the AI. What can you use that still gives you that whole being within the sphere of GDPR and collecting people's data. Because a lot of people don't understand that that is your data. Your
Yeah.
voice is your data. So are you happy with them collecting that much personal data from you? Because it has to go through some sort of security. So it's like, like the chicken and the egg. It is security, but then how much security is it? So it was really interesting that she brought it up. So yeah, I just thought I'd chip in there.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because no one really knows.
No.
No one's 100% certain. No one has all the knowledge. So it's very risky, and you have to, especially if you're dealing with in the workplace, like client data, employee data, you have to be so careful, and you have to constantly review, because no one tells you, oh, this new laws come in, you have to now switch your tactic, you have to be on it to monitor it, and that's the longer term investment as well. So yeah. Emma, did you want to join in?
Yeah, just from a HR perspective, I think one of the things that AI is being used for, but maybe isn't having as much business impact as hoped, is around recruitment. I know you had it on your slide previously, in the danger zone. It's tricky. Somebody said before about using automation for some of the HR processes, being nicey nice. It's really challenging in HR at the moment, where costs are squeezed and HR departments are small within businesses, to make impactful decisions, to use your time in the right places. For example, where should AI be used? Where should we invest our time to introduce AI? Recruitment feels like an obvious one, because obviously it could review CVs, and some kind of tool could review CVs. But I can see it having an impact whereby, obviously, I've already spoken to people who are job hunting and have been on the receiving end of having their CV auto rejected for all intents and purposes, and responding to it really negatively. I don't know how much impact that's going to have on employers, but it could longer term. And then the other thing is just around, so in a lot of businesses, it's a fairly small world that we're recruiting in. It's a fairly small pool. So it might be that my recruitment bot, which I don't have set up, by the way, but let's say in the future I did, rejected a CV, and then that person thought, oh, I've been rejected, I actually think I'm pretty decent, and they know somebody at my company, then they may go around the bot and speak to a hiring manager or somebody fairly senior in the company who they've worked with before at another company, and say, oh, I've been rejected. And then suddenly it comes back on us, oh, you've rejected this person and they're actually great. I don't think your AI is set up correctly. And so I can see that actually starting to have a detrimental impact on the way that AI is viewed, especially around recruitment practices. So whilst I can see the benefits, one of those, how do you actually apply it to be meaningful and useful? So I can see that being a cool idea that actually might in reality not work as well as we hoped.
Yeah, it's really tough, because I think, especially in recruitment, you've got on the one hand the sort of bots that scan for keywords and stuff, and they reject based on how accurate the CV is. But also on the applicant side, they're using AI for their CVs. So you're not necessarily measuring the quality of someone's knowledge and the quality of their experience. You're assessing them on the quality of their ability to prove that through AI. Does that make sense? It's the whole game has changed. It's really
That's
interesting.
what I was going to comment on, because I'm literally on that side of things just now. And yes, it's very much okay, these ATS systems are filtering on this, this, and this. How can we work the system to make sure we at least get through that step and get to the point where a person is seeing my CV? And then so my CV has multiple audiences now. It has the ATS, it has the hiring manager, it has all these different people, and I've got to tailor my CV for all of those different audiences. But the AI part is like a kind of war of attrition, in that AI escalates, so all the candidates escalate, so AI, it's we're matching each other all the way up, and that's not necessarily helpful. But yeah, that's already happening. We're already sitting there going, what keywords from the job description, what keywords do I need in my CV to get to a person? And also doing how do I get around the AI to talk to a person as well?
Yeah, it's true. And I don't think that's something that has been solved yet, or potentially will be solved for a while.
And I think AI is there to fix a problem in that some of these jobs are getting ridiculous amounts of applicants, and there's no way that one person can work through those reasonably. So you have to have something in there to help them. The question is what and how. You know, you're getting jobs that get thousands of applications. How do you reasonably work through that? I wouldn't want to do that. You know, I've recruited, I wouldn't want to be the one having to do that. I'd want the shortlist version.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's me. I'll shut up.
No, thank you. I think that's really interesting, and I'm glad that we have people in the rooms in different spheres that can share their experiences in different kind of areas of it. Because we all face the same challenges, but just in different ways. So here is an example from employee engagement. So historically, in our sector, employee engagement relies really heavily on surveys. So an organisation might run one huge survey each year, collect thousands or tens of thousands of responses, and then there's like a whole team that spends weeks analysing the results and then giving those reports to senior leaders and managers. So you have the human element, but this is one area where we've actually seen AI really well suited to that, because it will take humans a whole team weeks to do that, and doing that consistently across every team, and the way they want to split the data is huge. So with AI, it could summarize, like, say if you have a question asking like, what do you like about working here? AI can summarize the themes that people are talking about. It can look at, okay, this females in London in the sales team speak a lot about pay, whereas in America they speak about workload, or, you know, you get so much more of a depth and nuance of the analysis when you're looking at large data sets like that, and it can identify those differences without a human having to manually read every single one. So it's more accurate, really, because you minimize the risk of human error, and it's just so much faster. So when you think about it in that example, the improvement is not just the fact that it can analyze. The improvement is actually how it changes the human experience. So if you're an HR team and you previously spent days manually coding comments and validating the finding, understanding it, your time is freed up to go and actually look at, okay, we now know what the data says. How do we act on it? How do we close that loop? How do we use this data to take action? Whereas previously they were just focused on understanding the data. So when you speak about the end goal and human judgment, it's not necessarily replacing humans. It's about redirecting their time to more strategic things. So that's one area where at Impulse we've seen it, is looking at huge data sets and like pinpointing trends, patterns in those signals. Then we talk about the total cost of ownership. So when organizations assess an AI product, they often focus on the most visible cost. So that might be the license fee, the model fee, or the cost of like the initial development of these tools. But we found at Impulse that is only part of the picture. And I briefly mentioned earlier my Claude bot that sends me newsletters. They have at Microsoft, I think, rolled out these coding tools to developers, and they were all using Claude Code. So rather than writing the code themselves, a bot was doing it for them. And they actually had to cap it because they were using up so many tokens, and so they were using it so much that the cost of running these tools was actually greater than the salaries of those developers. So the cost can grow exponentially. So you kind of have to consider that. And this can be anything. It could be like preparing and cleaning the data that you need to feed to the AI, the cost of connecting it to your systems if you're rolling out something internally and you want to give it access to different systems that your employees are using. The biggest one I find is security and privacy. But those are obviously really important. And then there's like the testing of it. You have to make sure you're maintaining these tools, you're evaluating them, you're testing them, because we rolled out a product last year where we hadn't tested it enough, and like the reputational damage was huge with one of our clients, and they were like, we've given this to all of our employees and it doesn't work properly. So, and me personally, if I use a tool once and I find it's rubbish, I won't go back to it, even if they say, oh, we've improved it. I just will think that's rubbish. So yeah, so the costs of making sure it's successful in the long run are really big as well. Training is another one. And obviously the proportion will be different in every organization or every team or even personally. But the point is to see below the surface. So yeah, just considering rather than the upfront cost, what the iceberg effect is. So thinking about those areas and the complete operational system that will make it safe and useful. This is really hard to like consider or create a framework for, because it's so nuanced depending on what you're looking at. But here's an example of the infrastructure iceberg. So above the waterline is the visible feature. It might be the chatbot. It might be, in our case, like automated summaries or like AI recommendations that appear inside the product. But below the water is obviously the work required to make the feature work. So in our industry, data is highly sensitive. So employees need to trust that their comments will remain anonymous. So managers should only be able to see the results for the teams that they are authorized to review. The AI cannot invent a result. It can't misrepresent the data or hallucinate or leak data between groups. So we need really strong controls around permissions of what people can see, thresholds to make things anonymous. And that's been one of the sort of key challenges for us, is the hallucination, because you're essentially misleading people. But yeah, so in this example, McKinsey notes that for every $1 spent on AI, you should expect to spend $9 on data and people. So that's kind of implying that the initial upfront cost of any tool on average is just 10% of the long-term cost. So one example at the bottom here is policy bots. So there was an example where this is actually my last company, we rolled out Policy Bot and we uploaded all of our policies and people were asking it questions, but it was hallucinating and they were giving the wrong things, and like the implication on our contracts, our licenses, our legal stuff was huge, and you can't really see that until you start using it in practice. So yeah, just a consideration there. Another important distinction, I've only got a couple slides left because we're nearing our time, but whether AI is being used internally or to customers. So the same evaluation framework still applies, but the threshold kind of changes, because for internal efficiency, the goal is normally to reduce effort or complete tasks more quickly. So these might be things like we spoke about, the developers coding, or if you're a marketing team, drafting comms, that kind of thing. And they can tolerate more experimentation because there's normally a human inside the process. So a member of staff can review the output, they can correct it, they can decide whether it's suitable, but it doesn't mean that it has no risks. You still need to make sure confidential data is protected, outputs still need to be checked, but you can often learn quicker and more cheaply because a human still remains accountable. But if you're customer facing, it's a little bit different, because once you can't, like we can't tell on our platform what AI is going to say to our clients. So once that output is put in front of a customer, the expectations become much higher. and the output represents us as a company, as a product, and companies use that AI to make decisions. So any inaccurate answers might damage trust in the entire feature, even if, like I say, you've got hundreds of previous answers that are actually correct. So that is one thing that I think should be as human as possible. You need to kind of try and ensure that a human somehow remains in the loop. So you could roll it out as a hybrid path. So this means like using AI to first develop the capability, but then ensuring that the customer is reviewing it. So the simplest way we do that is to put a little label in each one saying, this is AI generated, please make sure you review it. And it's really hard to track it and make sure people do that. But yeah, you need to just remember the role of human interaction. This is the policy bot. So this was the opportunity we chose not to pursue. The idea was the policy bot. An employee could ask any question about the policy. It appeared quite attractive. But when we assessed the feasibility, the risks became a lot clearer. So some questions could involve legal, finance, or personal consequences, and an incorrect answer could create a much bigger problem than initially anticipated. So we ended up rejecting it because, for example, the AI could retrieve policy documents rather than attempting to provide an answer. So if you don't have the rigor around defining what it can give, then it can just hallucinate, it can tell them the wrong thing, they could end up breaching the policy. So the cost of being wrong in that instance was really high and the data quality was really low. So we walked away from that, and that was the right decision in that instance. So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve, I think, and making sure that, yeah, you can guardrail it. This was actually an example where it worked really well. So this goes back to the feedback, the survey feedback. So we found that organizations were collecting huge amounts of data, but the HR teams didn't always have the time or the confidence to interpret it. So the information already existed in our platform. It had a defined structure. The access permissions were already in place. So it had all the data it needed, and we could restrict it to analysing that specific set of results. And then it read all of those things and it automated these kind of actions. So with managers, their role is to take the survey, take the feedback, and then take action to improve the morale in their team. AI was really good at that. And if you kind of frame it as like a coaching tool, it gives them the confidence they need to act on it. It gives them trust in AI. And so framing in that instance was really also very key for making sure people want to use it and making sure adoption is really strong. Because as we say, if it fails in the first instance, it's really hard to get that back. Okay, so I want to finish I wanted to leave 10 minutes for questions, but I wanted to finish with, if you then go away tomorrow to your organization or your team or just yourself with 3 questions, this would be what I would recommend. So the first one is, what is the pain? What is the friction that we're solving? Who experiences it? How frequently does it happen? And what does it cost us in time, in money, in lost opportunities? So if the main justification of using AI or rolling out AI features is that it would make the company appear innovative, it probably needs a bit more work. So we start with looking at the areas of pain and friction. Then we assess, is the foundation ready? So do we have clean data? Do we have well-governed systems? Do we understand who should have access? Do we understand how it can be maintained? And crucially, is it testable? So can we test the output? Can we make sure that we have a human in place to have involvement in that as well? And that leads us on to the third question, which is it worth the iceberg? So are we prepared to fund the work below the surface? Engineering, data, quality assurance, training, and then will that value remain high enough once all of those costs are excluded to make this worth the investment? And that kind of looks back at that framework we looked at earlier. So that allows us to distinguish between something that's technically possible and something that's actually strategically worthwhile. I think that was my last slide. Yeah. Anyone have anything to add? I wanted to make it a little bit more of a discussion at the end. I'd be interested to hear what AI opportunities you guys are considering for the future, or what challenges you've encountered, or where you think this framework could help. Yeah, we have a hand up.
I think for me, I think 2-3 slides back where you were talking about the use case that failed because of the data. I think that's a conversation that a lot of people miss. And I'm coming in with my IT perspective lens. Is a lot of upfront work needs to be done before you can actually trust the LLM you're using, because it's feeding off your data. So if your data isn't clean, if your data is inconsistent, it will lead to your bot hallucinating. But it's a lot of work to be able to get it to a level that everyone can trust. And I think that's why, for me, the whole conversation about framework and how you want to implement it, I find very interesting for the governance structure side, because everyone's like, oh, it's very easy, just plug and play. It's not just plug and play.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the misconception. It was like, oh yeah, well, we have a Microsoft tenant. It comes with our subscription. We will just use it. But it's only as efficient as what you feed it. And it's only as good as the data you give it. So if you don't have a clean house, then it's not going to work as efficiently as you want. And that's what I've seen across the board of people that I've had conversations with. And I think for the IT community, in terms of like places that I've been, it's always the, oh yeah, it's nice, but no one is saying, how can we bring down the upfront cost of implementing the AI?
Yeah.
So,
and if you work in a small company like I have, they don't want to invest in getting the right people in place to make sure that happens, and then again it creates the extra cost later because you have to fix it because you didn't do that upfront investment, and actually you need to now revisit the whole way you built it and rewire it. And so I think putting the right people in the right seats to make that happen can be really hard.
But thank you, this was really, really helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed. And I'd love to continue the conversation like offline if anyone has any sort of areas that they think they don't really know. Not that I'm an expert by any means, but I do like sharing like what we've seen work and what other people see work. And we've got some big plans on our roadmap, and I'm just interested to know whether the roadmap will look the same in a year's time once we've got all these new technologies out there, because it's just changing so much at the moment. Anyone else want to add any thoughts? Or
thank you very much, it was very insightful. I'm only just getting into the journey of AI and looking in various places, but the information you provided was really useful for me, so don't be surprised if I don't get back in touch as I'm doing some more research. I'm a business analyst. I think the thing I first liked about your is making sure it's going to solve the problem. So you had my attention right from the slide beginning.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
And I do like your breakdown of how things can go wrong. I mean, I've obviously thought all this through, but it's very clear that you do have to be so careful when you want to. Someone just comes up with we want to have AI. So it's very good, very much.
Yeah. It's scary. It's scary when you've got, and you often have like KPIs tied to it of how much are you using AI, how much are you, like if you're in a tech team or a product team, we need to invest everything in AI, but actually that creates so much pressure that the decisions often aren't very good. Because
It
you're
needs a
just being
very
told
good,
what to do.
yeah, it needs a very good strategic plan to be effective. And
Yeah.
yeah, be interesting to see how things go. Like you say, your roadmap now, and then in a year's time, it'd be very interesting to see how that changes.
Yeah, for
Mm.
sure. Okay, anyone else? Or should we give 5 minutes back?
That was really interesting. Thanks, Flo.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so